So welcome to this week's episode of Crap No One Tells You. With me today is Vince Vaccaro from Vaccaro Electric. And we're going to have a conversation about the crap no one tells you about being an electrician or owning an electrician company. So Vince, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
So let's start with a very broad question. What is some crap no one tells you about becoming an electrician?
Uh, well, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, it is quite a glamorous profession, to be sure. I mean, there's extremes you have to deal. Like today, it's 96 degrees out, and there's times where we work in places that attics and things like that, and it's you ask yourself, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah, most people forget, no electric, no AC.
That's the other thing, right? So, and we try, like, generators are a big thing for us. So again, you brought up a good point. Without power, I mean, it's 96 outside. You're sitting in a nice cool AC, but your power goes out. You don't have a generator. You're not going to be cool too long.
No. So, what are some of like the most common things you guys do? I know the electric field is all over the place, right? Like you have
Yeah.
commercial electricians, you have guys that just install light bulbs. Like, what is it that you guys primarily do?
Primarily we do a lot of renovations. We do a lot of kitchens, custom kitchens. We do new homes, commercial renovations as well. When we started out in business, I thought that we should cover everything, which was a big mistake. I had a list that I had.
I'm going to be everything to everybody.
I had, and it was kind of a disaster at some point. There's some, you start to learn that, you know what, we're not really, you don't do it enough and you're not fitted for it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And then we used to do a lot of landscape lighting, for example. And a lot of the landscapers it's all low voltage.
Mhm.
So they'll do it and they, they do it as part of their, their install, their hardscaping, whatever. And then we'll do like the line voltage, which is the 120 volt receptacle that everything plugs into. And it works out better that way.
Okay. So,
Especially since my guys hate to dig.
which is a lot of
Yeah.
stuff is, you know. So one thing that I don't think really gets attention is your industry has really changed drastically over the last 10 years,
Oh yeah.
right? You're no longer dealing with the same kind of lighting. You're no longer dealing with the same type of bulbs. You can now run more light, like the entire industry has changed. Like, how has that affected you guys in the work that you do?
I think in a positive way, to be honest with you, we'll take lighting, for example. I mean, everybody knows that the LED craze
Mhm.
is here to stay.
Yeah.
All right. And it's for good reason. All right. Let me take a step back. When compact fluorescents, the curlicue bulbs,
Yep.
that came out a few years ago,
Yeah,
everybody was,
big hit.
they were a big
Everybody
hit,
needed them.
short-lived. They are terrible. All right. I can go into a lot of reasons why they're bad. Cold temperature affects them. Now, LED is not affected by those type of extremes. Extreme heat kills anything, to be honest with you. But when LED first came out, we were working for a designer, and she was a kitchen designer, and she did a great job with stuff. She's no longer with us, God bless her. But she put these lights in her kitchen. She would try stuff out, and then she would, push it to clients. But the LED at that time were so harsh. The color was so blue. It hurt your eyes. And she was like, what do you think? And I was looking at my son-in-law was with me, Jason, and him and my son work with me, my son, Vinny. And I said to him, we both said, we hate it. This was the infancy of the LED, right?
Right.
We're like,
When everything
they're
was just like
terrible.
bright,
Yeah,
super
yeah.
bluish.
Exactly. And that really turned people off for a while. But now the color temperature, which is what, dictates what the light looks like, has really gotten a lot better.
You can even get some where you can, like you have one LED, but you can control the different like
Oh yeah.
shoes and all that stuff in it.
Well, yeah, a lot of the manufacturers now will have actually in their lights selector switches. So you can go from like a 27K, which is a very warm or a yellowish light,
Mhm.
as bright as a 5000K, which is on the, you know, close to that blue spectrum light, but some people like it, you know?
So, I'm assuming you've had to step into a few DIY projects during your career.
Oh yeah, they're great. You know,
What are
a
some,
great tip for me is somebody who thinks they can do their own electric work.
so what are some things that you commonly see where you're like, "Ugh," like they get the concept possibly, but the execution isn't quite there? Because like I've seen some DIY projects where I'm like, you got the idea, you just didn't know how to properly execute it. So,
There's several, but a couple jump to mind. The biggest thing is for electrical work, and any electrician will bear this out. Connections. You have to have good, solid connections, and if you don't, that's the weak link, or that creates a lot of problems. Heat builds up, carbon, and it creates fires ultimately. So those are the kind of things that, like, we see them, and it's like, I got to take a picture of this. This is great. And okay, they're putting in a switch or an outlet, right?
right.
So somebody will take a wire. Usually you take a wire and you wrap the wire around the screw and in the direction that you're tightening it.
Right.
So
So that it
right, but
feeds in and tight.
and it tightens
Yeah.
itself. And they do it the opposite way. For the life of me, I don't know how that thing gets tight. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
It should push it out.
correct.
Okay.
So these are and the thing that really alarms me with some people is they'll start out with a breaker that's say a 20 amp breaker,
Mhm.
and you have to have the proper cable for that is a 12 wire, all right, which is rated for 20 amps. Now they'll switch wire all over the place. Oh, we ran out of 12, so let's put some 14 in, which is only rated for 15. Now you're taking a chance on that if that circuit has an overload, that part of the circuit is not going to be able to handle that current going through there, and it could potentially be a fire. So these are the kind of things that, like, I hear this from carpenters, and this is not to disparage carpenters, but a lot of them say, "Oh, electric work is easy. We do our own electric work."
Well,
And then you look at their electric work and you go, "Okay,
yeah.
stick with carpentry."
Well, yeah. It's you guys have the reputation on the work site to have the easy job, right? Like,
Well, I mean, just because we look good.
well, no,
Maybe
is that what it
that's
is?
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. It's one of those things that, you know, I always thought, oh, how hard can this be? And then you start doing it. And then the first time someone runs a wire through a stud and then the drywall guy shows up, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, what happened? You're like, well, you may have just drilled into one of my wires. Well, what do you do now? Right? Do you leave the wire? I'm like, why didn't you put a plate over it?
Correct.
But you know, it's one of those things that I don't think people fully appreciate how complicated it can be, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it. There's the mechanical trades. I mean, all trades, you have to have your codes that you have to, you have to abide by, which is, that's a given. But I mean, the electrical code book is that thick. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of things that you have to take in consideration when you're putting a house together, a circuit, what have you.
Right.
So
And
I
there's
mean,
a lot of stuff I would bet that, yes, it's not in the code book, but just having the experience, it's better to do this than that because this will have issues and that won't, right?
yes, correct. Oh, here's a good example.
Mhm.
Now if you take if you're a homeowner and you take a receptacle, okay, or a switch, and you look at, it has terminals, screw terminals on the side that we just talked about.
Yeah, there's generally four of
Right.
them.
Or they have little holes in the back that are backstab.
Mhm.
Okay. So we run into this all the time. And it's usually in developments, track houses, what have you. People strip to strip the wire, you stab it into this backstabbing hole in the back of the device and put it in, and they're done. Quick. All right. Instead of wrapping the wire around the screw and tightening it. I can't tell you how many times that those fail because with expansion and contraction of the heat that's, applied to the
Oh
circuit,
yeah, electricity generates heat. Correct.
those connections end up going bad, and that's where you end up with a problem. You lose power in half the room.
So not to switch profession, but it reminds me of the whole shark bite connection that I have with the plumbers, where they're like, "Oh yeah, it's super easy to use, but don't use it anywhere where you can't see it."
Correct. Yeah.
Right? So a lot of, we know a lot of builders, a lot of contractors, developers generally try to save money by saving time. So are utilizing things like that plug-in thing becoming a common thing with like new builders because it's faster to do, or is
Well, I mean, to me, I blame the manufacturers because if that application is not there, then they're not going to use it. They're going to be forced to go back to the old way of tightening it. Now we do never use that for that reason. Now, I think if I remember right, we have to do a continuing education. I have to do 34 hours every 3 years. Okay, so the last code course that we took, there was something I think they were bringing up that you have to have a certain size wire to even use that. So it is something that people are aware of, and it's being more common and more looked at.
okay. So I don't think a lot of people realize this, but I do, just because I've done some DIY mistakes and all that stuff. But one of the things that I didn't realize is that if you have an electrician that specializes in lighting, for example, you should bring them in before you buy your lights,
Oh yeah,
because like they can help you not only understand like how many light bulbs do you need, how many inset lights do you need to get, like what type of lighting are you looking for. I think people have this concept that, electricians, no, they just do the stuff that's behind there. No, they actually will. A good electrician that does lighting will kind of help you design your lighting so that you get the lighting you're looking for.
absolutely. I mean, you have to go by. It's so individualized. Every project's unique. I mean, commercial, for example, is going to be a lot different. You have these lay-in lightings. These lay-in lights here, much different than a custom kitchen. So yeah, you have to have, and you have task lighting, which is your under cabinet lighting. You have to consider that as well.
So you guys, like, let's say homeowners like, well, I want to look at some stuff. They should call their local electrician that does lighting and go, hey, I want to replace my lighting. Could you come take a look and see what?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a mistake for a lot of homeowners. They become YouTube electricians, right? I mean, I use YouTube for certain things. Everybody does, but you got to really be discerning too, I think, because you look at some of the YouTube guys and you go, oh, this guy don't know what the hell he's next.
Right.
Then you see some guys that you could be discerning and know this guy seems to know what he's talking about.
But the problem with all of this stuff is, including with you guys, is you go to YouTube, you look at someone. If you don't know anything about it, you see it and you go, yeah, that looks good to me. That looks easy enough. Let me do it. Right.
Yeah.
And then you bring out the pro to come look at it and they're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, who told you to do this?
And the money that you thought you were saving, you're spending double now.
Right.
Instead of just being proactive
Mhm.
and getting a professional in there to just evaluate your space.
Yep.
Tell you what you need to do. Like, okay, for when we do a home or we do a renovation, we'll supply the basic lighting. We'll go over the whole layout with the customer or the designer, and we'll put it down on paper. The customer would typically go out and buy their own decorative fixtures.
Yep.
Because that's their own preference, and then sometimes they'll come up with some junk and they'll say like, what do you think about this? And that's real nice. Oh, here's one. This was years ago. Here's a good example. Guy bought these ceiling fans. He says, "Can you put these fans in for me?" Sure, sure, right. They're like $29 fans. I forget where he got them from, but and he goes, we put them in, and you put the fan on. It's going tick 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 tick, and he's like, and he's looking at me like, "Why is that fan doing that?" And I said, "I don't know. Who spent $29 on that fan?" You know, you get what you get.
Right. So you've had your business for a while, right?
Yeah,
So how many,
that's all I've ever done.
were you always on your own?
No, no. I worked for a couple. I did my apprenticeship when I got it. I was an electrician in the Navy on an aircraft carrier.
Okay.
So when I got out of the service, I worked for a contractor and did my apprenticeship with. And all we did was commercial and industrial work. We never did any residential. And then I was a union electrician probably for about 16 years. And then when I got out of there, we started our own business up.
So what made you want to start your own, and how were the first couple of years?
I mean, the first couple of years were pretty good. We were very busy. I started doing work. We were doing a lot of solar work for a company. And that's really what pushed me into it.
So you kind of started as a subcontractor for someone else, not necessarily selling directly to end consumer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and most of the time, well, not most of the time, probably 40% of the time we're working for builders or project managers. But then we'll work for the customer thereafter. You know, my wife, God bless her, we had a conversation years ago before we went into business. I like to go into business someday. I really would like to do this. And then I came home from work one day, excuse me, and I said, "Hey, I quit my job, and we're starting a business Monday." She said, "Are you kidding me?" It was something like that.
Right.
I think she said other things. But
Yeah.
she's my best friend. She's very patient. She had to be with me, but
So, and then you were off and running.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we had a plan that we didn't really implement. We were going to, we were going to do this, and we were going to, get it ready, and then, have this many accounts, and we had one big account, and I was talking to a guy. I said, when's it the right time? He was in business forever. He says, it's never the right time. You just got to pull the pin and do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it worked out. We had like any business, we had our, ups and downs and learning, growing spurts.
What's a big, let's say someone is listening to this and they're like, yeah, I'm an electrician. I want to go, out on my own. What would be the one big lesson you would tell them? Listen, doesn't matter what else you do, just avoid this or do this.
I mean, to be honest with you, I consider myself a lifetime learner.
Okay.
And education's not cheap, man. You know what I'm saying? You make your face. It's costing you.
Yes, it is.
Right? So, I mean, for me, it's been follow my gut.
Okay.
Like if something seems too good to be true, it's usually too good to be true. Like, for me, I learned to trust myself, and I'll bounce things off my wife, and I'll say, "What do you think about this?" And she says, she'll tell me, that doesn't sound right. What do you think? And I say, I think the same thing. This guy, like a certain contractor, for example,
Right.
And she'll say, well, then sometimes you got to say no.
Did you ever go against your gut feeling and get burned?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Many times. I mean, it's like, sometimes it's like, and then you think back and you go, you know what? I knew that wasn't the right thing to do, but I did it. Why did I do it? Because maybe you think, your ego thinks that you can make it right. Sometimes this for somebody going into business, right? That's just getting started. This is what I would say. Don't be afraid to say no, because you can't do it all. I think when you start to bite off more than you can chew, you end up pissing too many people off. You say, oh, I can be there Tuesday. Well, I really can't be. I meant next Tuesday.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a lesson in business in general, is that people they're afraid to say no. And sometimes no is the right answer.
Yeah.
Like, because you're doing more damage to you and your business by saying yes than just saying no. Right? Because now you got to play I overbooked.
Oh, yeah.
Can I come next week? Or, oh, I took on a project that I really wasn't comfortable doing because I had relied on getting a sub to do it, and now I can't get the sub. Like and people don't realize how frequently subcontractors are used in projects.
Oh yeah,
I like,
you have 100 bosses.
right,
Yeah.
which makes workflow super easy.
Well, yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, and time management. I love the guy who calls you up and says, "Oh yeah, I'm going to give you a heads up," and then he calls you and says, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And it's like you got to juggle, you know. This I got a good friend of mine. He says, and he's talking about an old TV show, the Ed Sullivan Show,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, "You ever seen the Ed Sullivan Show?" And I said, "I remember. You know, I'm not that old, but I remember there was a guy who had all these spinning plates. He was
Right.
he had like
I've seen this. Yeah.
like he's had all these spinning plates going back and
Uh-huh.
forth. And it's like, I feel like that guy, you know, and sometimes I could relate to that because sometimes I feel like that guy, but you got to make it. And you know what? It usually works out. If I could give one piece of advice to anybody new who's starting it, is that, you know, don't overstress yourself, but also let your yeses be yes and your nos be no. I mean, it sounds simple, but you know what? I say to people, look, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to be straight with you.
Mhm.
And if you might not like it, but it is what it is. So, you know, I'd rather tell you what I need to tell you instead of telling you what you want to hear.
Right.
You know, does
Yeah,
that make sense?
That definitely pays off in the long run.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because then when you say something, they know that's whatever it is, right?
Right.
You tell them, well, I can't get to you in 6 months, or no, that lighting is horribly wrong for this, like whatever it
Absolutely.
is, right? They start trusting you.
I mean, trust is a big thing for any business.
Oh yeah.
You know, I'll tell you the other part of it is having good help. That's a given. I'm very fortunate. My son-in-law, my son, they've been with me for years, and they're top-notch mechanics.
So you guys really are like a family.
We are a
business.
family business. We just hired a new kid, and I love him. He's a great kid. His name's Matt. When you start to think that there's young people who don't want to work, then you meet somebody like him.
That absolutely loves it.
Yeah, he likes it. He wants to be he's good with his hands. He's smart. He pays attention. He's respect. He's a good kid. You know, I wish I could clone him.
There's probably a lot of other ones out there. It's just seems lately with the trades. I mean, it's no secret the trades took a beating for years,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, because everybody was told, go to college, do this, you know, go get a degree, and now you go get a 4-year degree, and you come back and you still end up being an electrician, right? Now you have to go back and finish the trade part of it and get your licenses and all that
That's
stuff.
why you're paying your student loans off.
Yeah. So if someone was looking to get into, let's say, someone's thinking about the trades, would you say that looking at becoming an electrician is still going to be viable? I mean, I think any trade you go into, you're going to end up being profitable, right?
Oh yeah.
Just because there's fewer available and the demand is going to go up. I don't think demand's going down for the trades anytime soon.
Not from what we hear. We hear, I guess from the future
Mhm.
outlook is that, like you said, people don't want to work. It's physical work.
Yeah, it's not
No.
easy, right?
It's not easy, especially when we're doing more commercial work. You're not doing with little wires and switches. You're running
massive.
4-inch conduit, you know, and pulling. We have pulling machines that pull wire. So there's always that. You're working extreme temperatures, but you know it's pretty decent pay too. So and if as the trades become smaller, you know the pay is going to increase. So you know it's a good gig for younger people.
Okay. So any advice you would give to a kid that's getting into becoming an electrician? Like, yes, you have your schooling, but what other things should you kind of study or explore in your free time before you go take on an apprenticeship?
Well, I mean, I tell you the truth. I was when I was in high school, I wanted to do something different. Academically, I did pretty well, and when I went to my guidance counselor and said I want to go to vocational school, he flipped out on me. He says, "No, you got the grades to go to college, and this is back in, late 70s." I said, I really didn't want to do that. And I love working with my hands. And I think that's the big part of it. You got to, I mean, that's with anything. You got to like what you do. You're doing, it's a third of your life, so you got to enjoy.
For some, it's more than a third.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You got to like what you do.
So basically, don't let anybody talk you out of the trades if that's where you feel like you should be going.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I think there's a guy that we both know who works with a lot of younger people and guidance, and I'll give him a plug, Jay. But he's he does a lot of good with kids. Everybody's not made for college, and how many psychology?
He was actually on a podcast earlier. The dropout rate from college that he gave us was, I mean, that number was staggering.
Oh yeah.
But if you go to take a semester or two at a college, you're still like the price of a new car, right? That you've paid in some instances.
Yeah.
Only to figure out then this wasn't really for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would recommend to kids, if you have an opportunity to take a summer job, take one with a contractor, right? Even with a GC, get to see what every job on the site is, because I mean, yes, they are all grueling, but they're not all equally grueling, right? Like, you're not going to be the gopher for the rest of your life carrying in drywall or carrying in.
Oh, no, you got to pay your dues.
Right. And that's, I mean, we had a guy here talking about the culinary arts and being in the restaurants, and same thing, like you pay your dues early on and then you move on from there.
Yeah. When I first started in a trade working for the contractor I spoke about, we did a lot of high voltage work. So we were doing, we were in the ditches running 4-inch conduit, and then we'd pull high voltage cable, which was, in some cases we needed a crane for it.
Oh yeah. That people don't realize how much that weighs.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think and you have to, so I think some kids' expectations are a little unrealistic. So they think that they're going to get out of high school and automatically they're going to be making, buku bucks. Well, you got to start out like taking a coffee order.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
If you can't take a freaking coffee order, and you were going to trust you with other things,
Right.
So I mean, it's
that actually brings up something interesting to me. Is a lot of times people think, well, I'm getting hazed, and I'm like, you're not getting hazed. They're testing you, right? And they're not testing you to see whether you can't take a coffee order or if you're not willing to run to the coffee shop. They're testing you to see how reliable you are. They're testing you to see how good is your memory, how willing are you to do things, because all of that becomes an indicator of, how long you're probably going to stay with the company, what you're willing to learn. When can we put you out on your own to do your own job, right? And it's one of those interesting things that really doesn't get talked about. So,
no, it is. You have to take steps. That's a very good point, because if you can't be trusted with simple tasks, how can we expect to, give you something that's more complicated and with more responsibility and with more pay?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Goes hand in hand.
Pretty much. Real quick. So we talk about extremes, right?
Yep.
We were on a job, this is years ago, when I was still working it was in the union, and we were outside in an office building, and it was freezing cold out there, right? So the people in the office, where I guess they saw us out there, and they're like looking at us and laughing, and somebody made a sign up that said 70 degrees and held it to the window. Well, one of the guys in our crew made up another sign that said $35 an hour. Everybody walked away from the window. We didn't see him anymore.
Oh yeah. And that's what people don't realize. With that gruesome work, you often get paid really well.
You should. Yeah.
So, well, thank you for coming on.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
So this was enjoyable, and thank you for everybody for listening, and we will be back next week with another episode.